Love it or loathe it, this kit of the F-35 represents the future for many air forces and navies around the world. This is the third kit that KittyHawk have produced of the F-35 and is the dedicated United States Navy version. This aircraft has a larger wing than the Air Force and vertol versions, as well as catapult and arrestor hooks. The fuselage is made up from two parts. You'll be cramming a hell of a lot into these two parts. This kit does come with an awful lot of detail. I'm trying to catch here the raised panels. This aircraft is covered in them. It's going to make it relatively easy to mask and paint. I'm not sure 100% of the accuracy of the raised areas. I think it might be just a touch overdone. Here we have the lower fuselage. As can be seen, there's not an awful lot of it. You've got a lot of holes here, undercarriage bays, bomb bays. They take up a lot of room inside this model, so you don't get a lot. We do again have some of those raised details. There's some just in front of the bomb bay. Quick brush of sandpaper would take these down a bit if you think they are a bit overpronounced. Nothing really. I'd rather it's easier to remove them than to add them. Now for a quick look at the control surfaces. Again, some very, very restrained engraved detail. We're just going to pull in the wing here and see if we can catch it in the light. Really, really nicely done. You know, this will look good under a wash. Folded wing option, yep. Control surfaces all separate, yep. You know, there's a lot to say in this kit's favour for ways you can display it. This sprue contains the cockpits, some of the engine and the intake ducts. Both the engine and intake ducts are represented in their entirety. Maybe a bit of overkill a la trumpeter, but it will certainly add a positive feel to the model and quite a bit of weight. The cockpit does have some nice detail inside it. You know, a modern cockpit doesn't have a lot of dials and switches, but what there are represented here. Also quite a nice JDAM at the top there. And here we have another two sprues. A number of the sprues are actually they are separate sprues, but they're joined together centrally and folded over. It's a bit disconcerting at first, but they do actually fold open like an oyster shell quite easily. Things that I particularly like on this are the very nicely detailed nozzles. Again, the big tubby things to the right of the nozzle is the full engine. Undercarriage bays, you know, everything's here. Surprise, for me, certainly was pylons. Now, the F-35C can carry pylons. In fact, it's almost definitely going to have to, because the two internal bays are just not enough to carry all the weapons that the type will need to be an attack bomber in service with the Navy. These are all supplied, so again, completely defeats the purpose of a stealth fighter or heavily stealthed aircraft, but you do at least get all the pylons should you choose to display them. This sprue contains many of the specific parts for the US Navy version, including the beefed up undercarriage legs, parts for the wing fold, and something that confused me at first, a cockpit. Now wait on a minute, we've just had a cockpit. This kit has another one. Now there is actually subtle differences between the two cockpits. This cockpit on the US Navy sprue has the right hand wall cut away. I think that's so it is clear of the arrestor hook bay, which would be located on this part of the fuselage. Something to watch out for, because that might catch you unwary. It certainly caught me a bit unawares. I only just noticed it. Now the instruction book is very, very nice. It starts with some colour foldouts. There's one at the back and one at the front, which illustrates camouflage schemes. This one is probably my favourite. It's the squadron leader's balls. The instruction book is very well laid out. Front and rear you have two pullouts covering details of the sprue layouts and marking for the considerable weaponry that this aircraft could carry. There are a number of marking options. This is probably my favourite, VF-101. It's the Squadron Commander's bird for the initial squadron to operate the F-35C. So it's in high-vis markings, but it's certainly very attractive, and it is an operational aircraft, or soon will be. As can be seen on this page of the instructions, you are cramming an awful lot into that fuselage. The instructions are really good. They're very clear, very concise, show you exactly where everything fits. I think this model is going to be one of those you're going to have to take your time over and test fit twice before you glue once. This is the second marking option. Again, this one's quite interesting. It's a prototype, the first prototype, before it was actually fully painted. So it has blue fins, we'll see why on the next one, and various shades of turquoise and grey, which is how the aircraft was rolled out and first seen by the public. Here is the same aircraft a few months later. Now it has the national flags of all the users. The blue fins have now got these very attractive yellow lightning bolts across them, and there's lots of various markings, unit markings, manufacturers markings all over the airframe. Pretty typical of a prototype scheme. Much more of a plain Jane is this option. This is the third prototype. I believe this one was used for weapons testing. This is in the grey schemes that the operational aircraft will be predominantly carrying. It is to be noticed the unusual way the cockpit canopy opens forward like an old MiG-21. In the kit the cockpit canopy parts are clear, and you will need to use some Tamiya smoke or similar to tint them. And here are the clear parts. They are bagged individually, so they are beautifully clear, no scratching. One thing to notice is that, as you can see, the canopy has broken away on my model. This is how it came out of the box. Hasn't damaged the canopy in any shape or form, but just something to be aware of. You might not want to open this bag until you've checked that it is firmly attached. And here we have the etched parts. Again, these are very, very nicely done. You get a lot of detail for inside the cockpit canopy. One thing to note, like many Chinese manufacturers, do apologise for this, I'm having trouble picking it up, is that there's a very thin plastic film on both sides of the parts. I actually quite like this idea because it does, if you peel one side off, keep the other side attached, when you're cutting parts away they don't spring off and disappear. I mean, you would pay quite a bit of money for this little sheet, probably £7–8, so having it included in the box is a big bonus. Now at first I wasn't that impressed with the decals. They look like typical Chinese glossy thick decals. I was actually misjudging because, as it turned out, there was a very thick plastic carrier sheet which you could take off. Once removed, these are very impressive. If these are produced in China, there isn't any country of origin on them, they are a vast improvement over what I have seen in the past. They're accurate, really nicely printed. You know, there's no need for aftermarket unless you want to do a what if or future scheme. Now this little sheet contains all the complicated markings like the flags, insignias and so forth. If we zoom in, you'll see that even the British flag in this scale, which is, oops, maybe not zoom in that much, is really what we produced. You know, it's perfect register. I think this is a really good example of printing. This is the first KittyHawk kit I've seen, and I'm actually very impressed. There is an awful lot of detail here. You know, if I was still modelling in 1/48 scale, I would certainly be putting this straight onto my workbench. As it is, I'm going to have to wait till their next release, an OV-10 Bronco in 32nd scale. But a full build on this kit will appear in a future issue of Scale Aviation Modeller International, and we will of course bring you all the latest news and gossip from KittyHawk as it happens over the next year. And I'm sure we are going to be in for some surprising subjects in the next 12 months.